Hi, class. Welcome to another episode of the Real Talk Den in 310, the video podcast custom created for the asynchronous section of management communications here at UMass Amherst. Today, we are going to have meaningful conversation with Steve Najemy, an account executive at Breaktime Media. Breaktime Media, he's going to tell us a lot more about it, but is a Massachusetts-based media strategy and technology company that produces engaging and innovative content with the goal of taking a customer on a fun and meaningful path to purchase. I even get trapped in some of the games that I see on LinkedIn and online and really enjoy them. Today, we're going to talk about a successful career in sales as an account executive. And we're just so thankful that Steve has taken some time to talk to our class. So welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Carrie. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for wanting to grab some time with me. Yes, as mentioned, working at Breaktime Media right now as account executive. I don't know if you wanted to add it in. Just for a note, Carrie's brother, Chris O'Grady, is my manager. So, this transition is going to be really fun. Yeah.
I love the transparency. Yes. That is correct. My brother worked there for like 8 or 9 years, maybe even longer than that.
I think he's on, I want to say he's on 10 or 11. So yeah, he's been spearheading our team and just, we all look up to Chris. He's a great leader.
So in short, we're keeping it in the family today for my benefit. Yay for that. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about your career trajectory? I know from Chris that you are killing it at work. So tell us how you got here.
Chris is too nice. Yeah, happy to do that. So I don't want to go too far back, but I went to Plymouth State University in Plymouth, New Hampshire. So going into school, my dad was in sales. I went to school with a marketing focus and actually had a minors in sales and communications. So at school, I found we had a competitive sales class, actually. So we would partner up with other schools. We had corporate sponsors and more or less just got our feet wet in sales atmospheres. So as far as trajectory goes, we had, like I'd mentioned, a ton of corporate sponsors. I ended up taking my first job with one of our corporate sponsors. It's a company called Herc Equipment Rentals. You kind of think of it as an enterprise for heavy machinery and construction equipment. So that was kind of where I got my feet wet, just more or less on the operations side. And then I ended up getting promoted into an outside sales representative position. I worked there for about 3 or so years, and then took a job with UniFirst. For those who don't know, UniFirst was another corporate sponsor of ours that specializes in uniform rentals and facility services. So I live in Maine right now. I was working like the northern part of Maine, more or less getting some great experience, but also really trying to figure out where I wanted to sink my teeth. I had a friend, she's amazing. I can owe all of my success to her, that she works for Breaktime. Her name's Ivana Andrews, absolute rock star on our team. And she let me know that Chris was looking for a business development manager over at Breaktime. So I interviewed, absolutely just fell in love with Chris and the rest of the team and ended up getting an opportunity to work there. So I kind of started out as grassroots, making cold calls, setting up meetings for the other reps. And Chris so graciously offered me an account executive position. And I'm just a little over a complete year into the role. And it's been going great. Really thankful to be here.
I get the joy. Little fun fact for the class, I started my career in sales. So I get that adrenaline rush and how fun it can be in the right environment. And some days I miss it. So I totally get that. Now that you're a few years into your sales career, what has been the most important lessons you've learned? I would love to just what are the hard hitting, oh no, or
Totally. There were so many. I think the first one that comes to mind was just guilty millennial here. We want everything here and now. I think understanding that sales is a process. By no means did I get into my position here at Breaktime and just immediately was making sales. Truthfully, it took me about 6 months to really ramp up, build relationships. And then from there, I kind of started to see some success pay off. But yeah, I mean, I think just going in with the understanding that sales takes time, and it's really all about building great relationships, having meaningful interactions. Because at the end of the day, you can offer a great service or product, but I mean, people are going to buy from people that they like, and just
Mm,
having like those meaningful interactions. I think that was something that maybe took the pressure off of that presenting, and just more or less gave me that aha moment of, hey, like, let's just have a really meaningful conversation, and just see where you fit in this process. So I think that was like the hard hitting one for me. And then also just realizing you can really only control, especially going into a meeting, you can only control what you can control. And I say that by preparation is key. So, I know we're probably going to get into it too more in this interview, but a ton of research goes into getting ready for meetings, and, having a little bit of knowledge before meeting with somebody new. Not only does it help you just have a little bit of ease of mind going into the meeting, but our clients completely see that too. And I think
mm,
that goes really far with them. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I think right away, those are the first few that come to mind.
Those are two really important lessons. Mine was not take rejection personally. I used to
Yes.
take the non-sales, like I would work so hard to like pitch and then follow up and follow up and follow up, and then they wouldn't buy, and I would take it so personally.
It hits home. Yeah. That was another one. I mean, it is so easy because you put so much time and effort and energy into it. And by no means is maybe that client dislike you. It's just business is business when at the end of the day. So yeah, I think great call out, Carrie. That one hits home for me as well.
So I was trying, like, why don't you like me? And then it's like, oh, it has nothing to
Yeah.
do with you. It's not always about you, millennial. It's
Yes.
always about
Yes.
you.
Guilty.
What
No, but
should I have? Go ahead. I'm so sorry.
oh, no, I was just reiterating. It was just a good call out. Yeah. Don't take it personally.
Yeah, I spent many a nights just being like, oh, I needed that much to go. Oh, um, what I have a lot of students who are thinking about the marketing, digital media sort of landscape today. What should my students be thinking about when it comes to sales in your particular area at break time that they might not be thinking about? What's kind of like a big fallacy that they should probably like break down versus reality?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a lot. I don't want to use the word hype, but there is behind it, and I think it can lead to a really great career path as well. When considering something like that, I mean, I really just think it goes down to what's going to be, necessity over novelty, perhaps.
Mm,
So really finding your place in the market. Where break time is, we're like kind of a marketing add-on, but at the same time we're leveraged because we're unique than so many other people who are in our space. That was really my personal selling point for being like, oh wow, this is like a really cool program, and it's super unique in the space because we complement so many other things without going too into the weeds, in the marketing area. So I think that's one thing to consider. And then just sales in general, I mean, it's such a rewarding career path, but you really have to just make sure you're going to be a self-starter, and just have and continue having that motivation to get up and understand that, okay, this is going to be a step-by-step process. I'm not going to see the fruits of my labor necessarily tomorrow, but this could be down the line. I think just remembering that is really important to do. um yeah, that was really the ones that came to mind for me.
I love that you just said that about being careful about what's available, even though you might have tons of things available to offer a client. And this class in particular, they're, as they all know, and as you know, because we've talked, they have a real world project that they're working with a client, and they're not allowed to come up with any solutions until like the end of the term, because solutionitis is a terrible disease. It's a terrible disease. So many people have it where you get a phone call and it's like, I want to do AI in some capacity. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Is that going to meet the need? Or do you just want it because everyone else has it? And it's so tempting to like just give them what they want or to jump to the newest thing. And that's not always good for the client.
Absolutely. That really goes into like, yeah, that understanding and digging, and yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. You just can't just run and jump to that solution. It takes more understanding on, other factors going into it. So I think that's a great call out.
And it's on you if it doesn't work. So why would you want that on you anyway? It's on you.
This didn't work. It's your fault.
I know, it's like, oh, well, I told you to buy it, but that didn't feed any needs. So just a terrible cycle. So I'm glad that we called that out. That was probably important for them to hear. So in this
Absolutely.
class, you mentioned research a little bit. So in this class, we focus a lot of time on research and writing and how research and writing skills apply to real world situations with clients in sales and like they're doing in business, solving business communication problems to pitch a client on a new idea. How does that fit into your role? I know you touched a little bit on research, but I'd love you to dig into it a little bit, kind of what your process is. And then, what should my students keep in mind when it comes to writing and research that they might not be thinking about right now? I will be honest with you, I get a lot of pushback on like, why do we need to be, why are you so picky about the writing? Or, why do we have to spend all this time on research before we do the project? And so I'm hoping you can help support me.
I absolutely can. Starting off with research, I mean, it's in my daily schedule, research. Like I purposely block out like the first half hour of my day, just to committing myself to either keeping up with newsletters within our industry. So anyone going into media or tech, I mean, we have things changing by the minute. It's really important to do your research and stay on top of what's going on in the space. So certainly keeping up to date with newsletters, using social even. A lot of the times what Breaktime does, I mean, we work a lot with different consumer packaged goods. So really anything that you could find in a grocery store. And I found it really helpful just finding people who are either decision makers at those companies to follow on LinkedIn and or following those companies on LinkedIn just to, again, stay up to date on new product releases, changes in the environment, et cetera. So research is every day, especially going into meetings. I think I touched on it before. You really can only prepare what you can control. So having that understanding of what your clients are going to be looking for, what's important to them, understanding any of the happenings in their day to day, it goes so far, and they really do pick up on that. And that's I think how our team at Breaktime has done so well is because it's part of everyone's daily routine, the research piece. So I think that's a great call out. And it was one that I think I learned most at Breaktime so far. As far as writing, we're in an email era right now. I write every single day. I've worked with Chris all the time on different emails, and I always just value his feedback. I think it's so important to have a very clear and concise email. I think it's not an easy thing to do, especially when a company like Breaktime does so much. But having something that's going to provoke some thought, a laugh, and then also have some valuable context is a really difficult thing to do, especially when we're all calling on people who they receive hundreds of emails a day and they're maybe the busiest people in the world. So I hope I blanketed everything, but both are very important in my day to day. Absolutely.
No, it takes more time and energy to write something short than it does something long because you have more real estate. So it
Absolutely.
totally makes sense. Do you have like one big email tip, like a don't do or a do in a email to a client? I'm sure that would be super helpful.
Don't do. Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I should really know
I
this.
know this wasn't planned. I'm sorry. I'm agile.
No, I love it. It keeps me on my feet. I think that I really think that something to consider is just keeping it short and sweet. I think one thing to avoid is getting too into the weeds on details. I mean, that's just whenever I'm like about to write someone important an email, I'm like, all right, if I have a minute to spare, how can I get my point across the clearest as possible? So I hope that helps. But
No, that's super helpful. Mine is never assume tone because everybody writes differently. And so
absolutely.
never take somebody's the way that they communicate as something that it might not be or read too much into it without a phone conversation to follow up.
Absolutely.
Big,
That's
big deal to me.
always have a point of action too at the end of the email. I think that's really important. Whether it's going to be like some sort of soft ask or again, just something to get them thinking and or a meeting date. So I think those are really important.
Yeah, totally. So it sounds like you've had a lot of experience on the job to do the job well. I'm going to have you go back to college for a second because that's where we all are in this space here at UMass. If you could go back in time and learn something in college that would have helped your career in sales, whether it be taking certain classes, sounds like you took one, but more classes on something or an internship or networking, what would it be and why?
I think you hit on the ones that came to my mind. That's going to be networking and then an internship.
Mhm.
So I know some institutions require some sort of internship for their students. Plymouth State did not, and I kind of kick myself looking back that I didn't take advantage on my own of getting myself in some sort of internship. Reason being, I think I graduated school, was eager to get into the workforce, but really didn't know what I wanted to do. Prior to, I was always like, I always just really enjoyed being outside. So I was always just like, oh, we're gonna go dig holes this summer or work at the golf course. And like I absolutely loved that. So my thinking was like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of follow that construction vein, thinking that it might be fulfilling to me. Whereas I think by having a little bit more experience and um, just opening my eyes to the real world that might have just skewed maybe my direction immediately out of school. So I really do think there's a ton of value, especially with the project you're doing.
Mhm.
Chris always says, get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's a really great piece of advice because getting that experience working with a company in school before you're graduated is really just going to do wonders as to, giving you a little bit of guidance on where to go. I'm just going to go back and I'll just blame, just immaturity on not taking advantage of that. Definitely preoccupied. We went to school right next to Loon Mountain. I was snowboarding the entire time. So I'll own that right now.
I think
Sorry.
we all can fit into that bucket in some way, shape, or form back in college, and so can everybody listening. So it's extremely relatable for sure.
It
I say
definitely
that all the time to my students. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's basically in my syllabus. So I've also learned today that maybe I might be more like my brother than I originally thought. It took me over 40 years to do that. So there we go. Is there anything that you wish that your teachers spent more time on? Anything that I should keep in mind when it comes to a sales career that I can give my students that
the,
stands out?
yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I think I had really great teachers. I think it goes back to I kicked myself for maybe not leaning in on them enough because so many of them had these really great experiences. And that could be something that, hey, Steve doesn't really know what he wants to do when he graduates in 5 months. So that might have been something that, leveraging your network while you're at school, any career services that UMass may or may not have. And then just Carrie, to your point, just having, being a resource for your students, just to be like, hey, look, what are you into? Like, where do you see yourself? Kind of having that kind of guidance for me, I feel like could have gone far, but I know everyone's different. I think some people I graduated with had a very clear direction on where they wanted to be and are there. So, but just thinking on my own personal experience, I mean, maybe not so much what my teachers did or didn't do, but what I may or may not have taken advantage of while I was at school. So
I love that advice so much because they have so much at their fingertips. And also because this is an asynchronous class, they don't see me very often. And so this is my personal plug to come see me, hang out with me. I've lived like 20 lives and have had a million careers at this point to get me to where I am. So take Steve's advice and leverage your faculty. We want you to be successful
take the
for
advice.
sure.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. I'm not scary.
As far as
um,
it'd be very fun to hang out with. So
Right? Like I'm
also great.
fun. I'm a fun teacher, just, this, I didn't know this was going to be like gassing me up, but sure, why not?
Well, need it.
So I want to close this amazing conversation with advice for my students. I would love to know kind of a professional lesson, and it doesn't need to be from the job that you currently have, but a professional lesson that you had to learn the hard way. That if you knew more, or you took more time for training, or you would have just taken a beat, like what was that experience? What can they learn from it?
Yeah, we touched on the one I had in mind. We already kind of touched on, so I won't really get into it. But that was going to be taking the emotion out of it. That was really hard,
Mm,
to do, especially just being younger, out of school, getting into a career path where you kind of in a way have like this imposter syndrome in a sense, just being younger and maybe not knowing everything. So I think taking emotion out of it's really important. Also, just understanding, like, again, I'm trying not to repeat myself, but just every day isn't going to be a win. It's kind of like that 1% better rule. Just do something every day to make yourself 1% better, and
mhm.
results do follow. I think for me, I have a father in sales. I think a lot of the times, even on social, it's just glorified so much because it can be such a great career path. But just know, I mean, every week's going to be on your students to perform and get themselves to a point where they're going to be having a successful career.
Yeah.
Um, Especially when we're thinking of uncapped commissions, I think it's also just another tip. Have an end time. I've been guilty of it too, just not stopping work. Not saying like I'm a workaholic, but I think we all can just get caught up in like, oh, this. I feel like I have so much to do. I think it's really important to complement your busy work day with anything just to help your physical wellness or mental wellness as well. So I wanted to add that in.
I'm so glad you added that because you can't be good for anybody, including your faculty or your teammates in this class, unless you take care of yourself first. And I love
Absolutely.
that. Thank you for adding. I think that was a really important point.
Of course.
And lastly, is there anything we didn't cover today that you want to tell my students, or any professional or academic advice that you want to give them?
I mean, I think it's just important for them all to realize they're in such a great place right now. And I mean that is we have so much work and there is just so much opportunity out there. I think they're all going to be in a really great place, especially after this project, to really think about what they want to do and the direction they want to take it. My advice: don't rush into anything and just be certain and do your research before accepting any job offer. So.
Yes. Oh my gosh, please do that. Don't get desperate.
Don't get
Do it well. Don't get desperate, because getting yourself into a bad situation is much worse than taking your time to find something right, like the culture at break time for you.
abs abs
Steve, where can my students find more information about break time media? And then, if so inclined, can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So check out breaktimemedia.com. We're a small company, so we don't have any openings right now. But by all means, if you have any questions or if your students want to get in touch with me, LinkedIn's a great resource. Steve Najemy on LinkedIn. And then I can also give out my email. I'm happy to answer any questions or maybe just spread some more light on my adventure so far in the working world. But it's been a great conversation, Carrie.
Thank you, Steve. And I'll link to his LinkedIn in the show notes when we post this interview. So they'll be able to contact you via LinkedIn for sure. But thank you so much for your time and this great conversation. And come back, please.
Absolutely. It was great being here.